Hello and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. The first week of the 2024 NFL season is now in the books as we look to review it. I am, as ever, your host, Andy Davis. With me, I've got a returning guest who was meant to be on last week, but sadly, due to a situation beyond his control, he couldn't make it. So he's back in today. Someone I had the pleasure of meeting for the first time in person in Dublin just a month ago. With us today is from Hurdle Line, Asleep at Work, College Football UK, Aaron Fletcher. Fletch, how are things?
I'm good, man. You say it's out of my control. I was a bit of a pillock on Wednesday. I cut my finger at work. It was in my control. I could have just paid attention to my surroundings a little bit better. But yeah, unfortunately, I had to miss that one due to being stuck in A&E. But I'm so glad to be back, man. And yeah, it feels a bit. I said to you when we saw each other in Dublin that it felt weird to remember that you existed from there downwards, as is with a lot of people now.
Podcast here.
Yeah, but it now feels really weird to think that you again only exist from there upwards again, which is a bit sad. But it was great to see you. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it was great to see you. Saw a few people, for the first time in person who've been on my podcast or I've been on theirs. The likes of Paul Redmond from Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover, and many others. Non-podcast friends I knew from Fantasy Football I met in person for the first time. Just so many people that I could give a shout out to. But it was a great time, and the game was good, which helped because we won last year, which I didn't go to, was a bit of a blowout. So it was good to have this year a very competitive game, and one that went down to the final kick or final touch, which is
that game, the game we've got next year in 2025 is being played. It's Iowa State versus Kansas State, and that game is being played in the last weekend in November. The penultimate rivalry weekend in college football. So for anyone who's debating going next year, you can get a little taster of that game. Or is it? I think it's the 30th of November. I need to check my calendar to see which the last Saturday in November is. But it's the Saturday after Thanksgiving. That game will be played. So obviously some players like your seniors and the ones who go off to the draft will no longer be there. And there will be some new players in the freshmen and the transfer portal entrance. But we will get a taster of that game at the end of the season.
For a second, I thought you were saying that that's when the game will be next year in Dublin. I thought you were going to say it was late November in Dublin, which would have been amazing.
Unfortunately not. We don't get a rivalry weekend game. Like nobody would agree to that in America to take a rivalry game on the road. But yeah, we Iowa State, Kansas State is both of their final. Well, depending if they make a championship game or playoffs and bowl games, but it's their final regular season game this year, which is worth it for a bit of a preview to next year's game.
Absolutely. Let's head on to week one. Reviewing week one, of course, is our standard procedure on this podcast. So for those of you who have listened for many years, you know what we do. We preview the games, we review the games, and what happened there? I think Aaron came out a little bit of some sort of coughing fit behind the scenes.
Coffee went down the wrong hole.
Shouldn't we laugh at that, should I? Well, week one started with probably, I think, the game of the week. Ravens Chiefs. 27-20 win for the Ravens. Sorry, for the Chiefs. But that's not where the story ends, of course. The Chiefs thought they had, the Ravens thought they had, in fact, leveled the game when they went flat last second. Touchdown, I can't think of the guy. It was Rashad Bateman. No, who was it? I can't think now. Who? Sorry.
Likely.
That's the one. Yeah, right. Yeah. Sorry, my mind is completely frozen from work. Yes, obviously the last second catch, which was amazing to me because it was the ultimate drama. Because I watched the game on NFL Game Pass and I watched it at basically my commute to work and then to start before work. So I got the 7 a.m. bus, and then I got to work about 20 past 8, and then I watched the rest of it on the ad-free version on Game Pass, the full game. I watched it in my office before work, and I remember the app told me that there was 4 minutes left of the downloaded game. Okay, I thought they're not gonna go for the they're gonna miss the fourth down. They're gonna be incomplete pass, and then I saw Lamar Jackson throw for the touchdown in the end zone. And then I thought, okay, then for seconds. And then next thing I know, I see John Harbaugh given a 2-point conversion sign. So we didn't get it, obviously, because, it ended up being a toenail away from being in bounds. But we were almost set for what would have been a tremendous end of the game. You think about if they had got the touchdown and gone for the 2 points as well, that could have been, an all-time end. I think for me, this was the game of the week. It was fantastic. I thought both teams get a good account themselves. A bit underwhelmed by Derrick Henry's debut. I know he scored a touchdown, but I was a bit underwhelmed by his usage and how little he got. And Lamar Jackson, I thought, had his moments negatively, but I thought all round it was a good performance. And the Chiefs, they were pretty lethal. So I really enjoyed the game. What was your thoughts on the game, Fletch?
Yeah, I managed to get, I think it was up to the end of the third quarter, watching it live, and then caught up with it the morning after. And I thought pretty much the same thing. I thought it was a bit sad to see, Lamar Jackson had 16 rush attempts and Derrick Henry had 13. You always thought that Derrick Henry was maybe going to come in and take some of that rushing pressure off Lamar, but maybe that's not going to be the case. Maybe it's just to open up some lanes while everyone focuses on trying to stop Derrick Henry at the same time. It seems like Travis Kelce, it seems like the Chiefs in general have kind of maybe got over a little bit of those problems last year with they had the butterfingers, the case of the drops last year, which hopefully they've seen the end of. I say hopefully for the rest of the league. Please don't let it be too bad, because someone else needs to win the Super Bowl this year. But Xavier Worthy looks like the real deal. It was his touchdown to start to early in the game was fantastic. Very similar to, I compared it with Tom Kraft, my good Chiefs fan friend, and we were talking about it as it happened. And I said, it just reminds me of the Jameson Williams against the 49ers last year in the NFC Championship game. And we both kind of said, yeah, but Worthy looked faster. Which is, we all anticipated that record 40-yard dash speed. But yeah, I can't agree more, really. That it seemed a bit of a waste of Derrick Henry to have him rushing so little. He's a cowbell back. You need to rush him more. He needs to be getting the production. And you can't come away with a closer, tighter end to the game than somebody's toenail being out of bounds. I know his reaction afterwards was totally unacceptable, but other than that, what can you do?
Yeah, I mean, you can understand the frustration of Isaiah Likely and going back to the fans, but I do feel like that situation doesn't really gain anything. I don't think it's almost like there's no real positive to gain out of doing that. Obviously,
No.
Players frustrated, and every game matters in the NFL, being an 18-week season. But yeah, I personally wouldn't go down that route, because it just it just takes one nutter to ride up the wrong way, and goodness knows what's happened. So I kind of feel like if I was a professional, I'd go down the route of being like a Kante, just being very reserved. But in the heat of the moment, you can't really. You can see why he did it, essentially. But I wanted to talk a little bit as well about. I think the Ravens really missed a chance in this game. I don't think it was quite as much as the AFC Championship game when that was a real missed chance for them. But I do feel like there was a few moments in the game where I wanted to talk about where I think the Ravens will feel a little bit, let down by themselves, maybe thinking what if. And I mean, no doubt that week one doesn't equate to the rest of the season and the playoffs. I'm fully still have faith that they could play them in the playoffs and beat them. But I do feel like there was first of all, there was the defective pass by Darius Washington, and the Chiefs were forced to a field goal. Tucker missed a field goal as well. And then he got a chance at the Holmes interception, and there was a subsequent drive from the Ravens that didn't get a touchdown. And they were 20 yards at one point, 20 yards from the end zone with 3 timeouts. Didn't make that. And then that means they go behind, they missed a chance to get a touchdown. Tucker missed a field goal, and then the Chiefs have the ball second half. And then, Mahomes goes down the field, makes it 20 points to 10. And I think that period for me was crucial because if you had the Tucker, converted field goal, or if they had got the 20 yards or more into the end zone with those 3 timeouts, I think they could have gone to the half, 17 to 10 up or 17 to 13 up. And I think that could have been a completely different game. And also in the end, it worked out where, that touchdown did make all the difference. And I think obviously they thought they got the game equalising touchdown at the end. But I think, the Ravens will, on the one hand, I do think that is a missed opportunity. At the same time, you don't win Super Bowls in week 1. You don't come out of the playoffs in week 1. They've still got 17 weeks. They played the best team in the league in week 1, got out of the way. They got a tough division, granted, but I still have faith that the Ravens will, make my pick come true, my prediction pick of the Ravens winning it all. And I still think that, in a way, their last 2 games, they've lost to the Chiefs. I think that will only fuel them. And I think come the playoffs, at some point, the law of averages, Lamar has to beat the Chiefs and Mahomes in the playoffs. And I think at some point, the Chiefs have to lose. Even the best dynasties in the world don't win titles year after year. So I think, for me, still have faith in the Ravens.
Yeah.
But I think that they learned a lot from that game.
Absolutely. And I mean, one of the things I was quite, one of the things I think looking at as well in terms of the fact that where Baltimore may feel aggrieved at the fact that they didn't win, but at the end of the day, you can't, that's not a game where you're walking away going, well, if that call would have been made by the refs. So, you can't, I don't feel like there's a point where you can turn around and say the refs want to get, you can't make that excuse. You can feel aggrieved that you lost, but it's on you that you lost. It's things like they dominated the time of possession. They had nearly 34 minutes of the ball to the Chiefs, just a little over 26 minutes. You had you had 99 more yards in the game than the Chiefs. The Ravens had, I think, 452 to the Chiefs, 353. I know it was 99 difference. They had a 50% third down conversion rate, whereas the Chiefs, I know it's like there was a few less, but the Chiefs had 44%. Little stat, another game isn't played on stats, and I don't want to put the game down to statistics and, or PFF grades or anything like that. You want to pass the eye test, and I'll get onto one more point in a second on that. But at the end of the day, so even things like that, they dominated the ball. They were more efficient. You would think throughout the game, looking at all that sort of stuff, they were. If you looked at the game on paper, you would not think that the Chiefs would have won it until you saw the score bit at the end. But also, when you talk about that final drive, there's a couple of other moments and there's a couple of other points in the game where you maybe look and say that the Ravens definitely beat themselves. I mean, I'm looking at the play just before the Isaiah Likely one, where Zay Flowers was on his own in the end zone and didn't see the ball. On that same play, there was, who was it who was running across it? I don't know if it was Likely who was running across in the end zone, managed to get to a yard or so of separation. But Lamar completely whiffed on the pass, and it went, there were fans sat in row J who had a better chance of catching it than the receiver in the end zone, while Zay Flowers is on his own in the end zone. So there are moments like that as well where I think you've got to look and say, at the end of the day, the Ravens had every opportunity to win it without the opportunity to blame anyone but themselves at that point. Obviously, there's a lot of great, like you said, there's a lot of great things to take from it. It's week 1. Some of them are kinks. I don't know how much did Lamar play in preseason? Do you know?
I don't think he played. I mean, I don't really watch preseason games. I watched the Dolphins games and I watched Chiefs games just because of Reece Sammy, but I did not tune in at all, as we talked about in our line season preview. So if I'm honest, I have no idea whether he played in preseason. I have absolutely no idea.
I mean, it's one because it's so kind of. I think the thing I'm getting at is like Jared Goff never played in preseason, and I know we'll get onto Jared Goff a little bit later, or hopefully we will. But there are quite a few players now, starters, who don't play in preseason, and the reason I ask is I don't know if Lamar was one of them, but if he wasn't, and I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and say he wasn't, that is a case of he's playing his preseason in that game. That's his getting warm in real game scenarios against a defense that wants to hit him and wants to hurt him. At the end of the day, those things will happen, especially if you haven't had a preseason. So you can also put it just down to These things happen. No preseason. You maybe just, there are going to be a few occasions where your passes aren't quite on the money. There are going to be some things you don't quite notice on the field that may seem glaring to everybody else. We have the benefit of seeing a different camera angle, 15 different camera angles and replays and all that sort of stuff. Lamar Jackson has the benefit of 1.5 to 2 seconds of 6'4" defensive linemen running at him, which it's always like I can't say I can do it. So it's just one of those where, yeah, the Ravens might have beat themselves, but like you said, week 1 was given the benefit of the doubt. Saying no preseason, those things will be kicked, those kinks will be worked out and ironed out over the coming weeks.
Yeah, exactly. Right, let's head to our next game. We're getting our boarding passes out. We're going off to Brazil for our next game. The first ever, not only the first ever international game or NFL game in Brazil, the first ever international game played in week 1. We'll get into the score in a minute, but overall, what was your take on, I don't know whether you watched Friday night game, but what was your take on just from a outside point of view looking in of how it looked in terms of atmosphere-wise in Brazil? Because for me, it looked like there was a real carnival, as you'd expect with being Brazil,
yeah,
a real carnival sort of atmosphere. And I think being the first game as well, I think there was a feel-good factor because not having to travel all these miles to get to the game now. So, yeah, what's your view on just the Brazil spectacle, and maybe even look at the field as well? Because that we'll go into that later on, actually. But let's head purely atmosphere alone. Your take on that?
Well, on this one, we can start with the positives. The atmosphere was fantastic, and a lot was made out about how would Brazil treat them, how would Brazil feel for the players. Now, I haven't exactly spoken to any of them that were there. I don't have those kind of powers, unfortunately. But by the looks and sounds of it, no one came away injured. Well, from what went on outside the stadium or the atmosphere. But the threats that everyone thought were going to happen, or that everyone was worried about and kicked off about, those things didn't happen. It seemed like it was a great atmosphere. Absolute props to the Brazilian population and the people who were at the stadium. Great atmosphere. I don't think any complaints can be made there.
Absolutely not. And the only fight I saw this weekend was in the States in the Chargers Raiders game. So it's I think, to be honest, I think we get the same thing in the UK. I think everyone's just happy to have the sport in their country. I think everyone's just happy to have NFL action. Everyone feels lucky enough to have NFL action. Like fights can start off week in, week out in London games. Within a year, they'll probably get rid of it. And I think fans, in a way, they'll know this. Whereas in our football or American football, it's not going to go anywhere. It's going to remain in your country for as long as it exists. So maybe the fact that maybe the people are more appreciative in other countries that don't get NFL in their home soil week in, week out, I think it just makes it more celebration of the sport. And I think it's I love seeing. And I did apply for media cred, didn't get him. I'm hoping at some point in the future that does become a reality. And of course, the fans are treated to an excellent game. As the Eagles did win by 34-29. I think both teams have really got to count themselves. I think you look at AJ Brown had over 100 yards, a touchdown, a really good touchdown in that game. Mm-hmm. Jaden Reed had over 100 yards as well. Amazing. He had 4 receptions for 138 yards with a touchdown. An amazing stat line there. But for me, I think the star would have been Saquon Barkley. Has to be. 109 yards, 2 touchdowns, 24 carries. Unbelievable. And I am currently writing an article about this, and I'm going to mention it as well in my winners and losers TikTok, that it feels very McCaffrey to the Niners sort of trade for me, because you saw McCaffrey with the Panthers, and he's a bit of a bell cow, used a lot. Goes to the Niners, he's just one of many guys, and that they're able to split the reps a bit more, and it's easing the burden on McCaffrey and the Niners. And I think what we're seeing with the Giants and Barkley being a bit of a bell cow, maybe not as much of a bell cow as McCaffrey was, but certainly used a lot. Whereas now he's got AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, so he's not going to be the main guy anymore. He may be the main guy if we're doing well, but he's not going to be the guy getting all the reps, all the snaps, all the carries. So I think albeit it's one game, don't get me wrong, but to get a hat-trick in your first game, unbelievable. And I think really may go off this year. I do feel like even though the O-line had its problems early on with the rookie centre, the one who replaced Jason Kelsey, Cam Jurgens, I think overall this Eagle team were really impressive to me. I think defensively they were a bit suspect, but they were playing a good team. So it's hard to know, but I think overall, I think both teams came away really good. Obviously, Jordan Love had the injury, which obviously, thankfully for the Packers, it's only a matter of weeks. There was some concern, especially from watching that video that came out of the injury. That could be a season-ending injury.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it's going to be just a few weeks. Malik Willis taking the reins. Potentially Ryan Tannehill has talked with him as well. I think overall, I think both teams, certainly on offense, really stood out for me. But yeah, what was your take on the game, Fletch?
Yeah, I don't think. Remember watching it. I didn't watch a lot of this. I did get to halftime, but I kind of, woke up Saturday. I had my daughter with me, and college football was only a few hours away. So it just seemed to, it just doesn't seem to quite catch on my radar at any given moment. So I was a little bit less on top of this game than I would have liked to have been. But from what I guess, it was a pretty even game. Both teams looked, I think, what was it? 34-29 at the end. So a one-score game seems about fair. The Eagles were definitely the better team. They moved the ball better. They just looked. They didn't blow the pack. Like you said, they didn't blow the Packers away, but they just looked generally just a little bit better. Just a little like they were. Yeah. So I think it was absolutely fair. It's a fair result. It went about the way we probably would have expected. I was a little bit disappointed. That might be the wrong word to use because it's the Packers. So I was happy that the Packers maybe looked like they could have been better. Jordan Love, what was it? What was his stat line? Was it 17 of 34? Was it 17 completions or 34 attempts?
Yeah, exactly that stat line. 260 yards.
That's a 50% completion rate. Like you would expect someone like Jordan Love to maybe be a bit more. What's the word? Efficient, I guess, with his passing. But again, I don't know how much stock you can put into week one performances. He kept them in the game. Going on to Saquon Barkley, I thought he looked fantastic. He looked absolutely brilliant. And my favorite stat from the week is that he has now scored more touchdowns at the Eagles after one game than Daniel Jones has at the Giants in nearly 2 years. So I think that says everything for where Saquon Barkley has gone in his career. Going in his career, I agree almost wholeheartedly with the Christian McCaffrey comment, and it's great to. I think it's great to see a genuinely very good player go to a place sometimes where they are a bit more of a cog in the wheel, where they are a bit more of a not a bit part, because even McCaffrey is alongside Purdy, maybe even more so than Purdy, the face of the 49ers. But you have so many other things to open up the game. McCaffrey at the Panthers, I don't think that he could be retired by now. He'd be getting it pummeled on every play because everyone knows that that'd be all they've got. Whereas the 49ers, they've got so many other different things going on. And the same with Barkley. If he was still at the Giants, I don't particularly think it would have been very pretty for him at the weekend, even if the Giants had him to use. Whereas, so I think Saquon Barkley going to a team where he can be a true contributor, but not be kind of the only weapon they really have, it is only beneficial to him. And sadly, only beneficial to the Eagles in their kind of want to go to the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I think I have to shout out friend of the podcast, Andre Dixon, who was very lucky to be there on media duties with his role at the Zone, and being a Giants fan, watching your old player score a hat trick for the team you probably hate the most. It's only one of the two. I think them and the Cowboys are surely the Giants' biggest rivals. And to see that must have been tough for him. But I'm sure, lucky enough to be there. I'm sure he's very privileged, and I think he went to his press conference as well. Moving on to the 6 p.m. slot, we are going to talk about one game, the Dolphins game. But before we do that, just a quick summary of the rest of the scores on the 6 p.m. slate. So the Steelers beat the Falcons 18-10. The Bills beat the Cardinals 34-28. What a game that was. Caleb Williams struggled, but he did get his first win as a rookie on his debut as they beat the Titans 24-17. The shock of the week, which I did almost predict, but I just bottled it. I went for the safe pick. The Patriots beat the Bengals by 16 points to 10 in quite an unusual scoreline, as well as the Texans beating the Colts by 29-27. One of for me, the best touchdown of the whole week came in that game from Anthony Richardson. And then the biggest blowout came as the Saints beat the Panthers 47-10. And we mentioned Daniel Jones before. They and the Giants lost 28-6 to the Minnesota Vikings with Dolphins' old boy Andrew Van Ginkel getting a defensive touchdown from a pick six. I believe it was a pick six, if not just a fumble. But the 6 p.m. game was also the only one place I was doing. I had Red Zone on, but my main focus was in Hard Rock Stadium, 6 p.m. The Dolphins took on the Chargers, and all I can say is few. This game at one point looked like it was getting away from us. You had the Jags scored 2 touchdowns early on, but then it wasn't going right. And Tua, for me, all game wasn't right at all. He wasn't, and we mentioned quarterbacks being on preseason. This felt like it was with him as well. Didn't quite feel with it, and I think he didn't play. I don't recall him playing a single snap of any preseason games this off season. And for me, he looked shaky. And at times the game looked done. When Travis Etienne is running down the field, he's getting towards the end zone. You think, okay, they're going to go 21 to 10 up or 7 up, whatever it was, and they're going to go and seal this game. They're going to get a stop on the next play. The way it was going, I thought that was possible, and then they would just run the clock down with Etienne and Bixby. But lo and behold, Javon Holland comes up with the play of the game. The game-changing play. He punches the ball out of Etienne's hands. Ball runs into the end zone. Turnover. We get the ball. Very first play. Tua throws the Tyreek Hill over 50 yards after catch. 80-yard touchdown in total. It just changed. It made it, I think it was 17-13. And then eventually we came further and further back. And then Jason Sanders with the winning field goal as time expired. What a game. But the biggest headline from this game wasn't even the game itself. It was Tyreek Hill's arrest. Just hours before the game started, he was spotted outside Hard Rock Stadium being held to the floor by the police. Now, I don't want to get into too much about the legal side because I don't want to get in trouble. But obviously, Calais Campbell was with him in the car. They said it's for a traffic violation. And then he's able to play the game and had a slow first half. I think that touchdown really just put him into life, and it was obviously a stand-up moment, and the celebration as well was pretty humorous. But obviously from a fan's point of view, so glad to get the win. I think, if I'm honest, I don't care how we get the win. I'd rather play bad and win than play well and lose. So I'm glad we got the win. But my God, it was nervy. But for you, Aaron, from outsider looking in, what was your take on the game? Because it must have been, I don't know how much you watched it, because I don't know whether you watched the game or whether you watched Red Zone, but what was your take on what was a quite exciting game?
Yeah, 6 p.m. kickoff. I tend to do similar to you there. I'll have Red Zone on one screen and I'll have a game on another. I had the Bills Cardinals on for the most part because my little brother's a Bills fan. So I'm sorry about that one. I don't like him either really anymore because of it. And I've been a known fan of Kyler Murray for quite a while, so I thought it was a game that had a bit more going on for me. But Red Zone came on, and after I think halfway through the third quarter, I actually flicked on the Dolphins Jags game because it looked very interesting and it was getting quite good. Three certainties in life. In fact, we'll go with, there's now a new fourth certainty added in life. Death, taxes, Tyreek Hill over 100 yards and a touchdown, and Tua Tagovailoa lead in the NFL in passing yards. Those are the only certainties we have in life. In fact, there might be one more, which we'll get onto when we cover another game. But those are the certainties in life. Those things happen. it was just an overall very fun game. And I think, like you say, it was tense and all that sort of stuff. But what I think I saw mostly from this, especially as it coming through on Red Zone, and it was, I'd love to say it was kind of put it ongoing. The game looks great, but also I'd love to see how Andy's team's doing. No, just the highlights coming through were just like, I need to watch this, because it felt like a game of a lot of, you might go through a few not so great play, like any NFL game, but this one felt like every now and again you just get a golden moment or a great play or an absolutely fantastic play. You mentioned the moment of the massive turnover, the punching the ball out of the hands. What we forgot to mention is I think the main thing that got me to turn it over was just the pure moment of chaos over the 2 plays where Jordan Poyer's hand gets caught in, is it ETN's helmet? Pure craziness. Well, it was something like the play before that. I don't know if it was a pass to ETN or ETN had just ran on the outside, but Jordan Poyer comes in and I think he tries to get his arm round. It ended up being pulled for a face mask, and the Jags got a few extra. His hand did get in his face mask. But he's got his arm taped up, hasn't he? So I think one of the folds on the bandage had kind of caught in ETN's helmet. So it was quite fun just watching Jordan Poyer get dragged off the sideline by ETN's helmet. So there was that, and then straight after that is the punch out. Crazy couple of minutes that I think could only really happen in a team in a game that has the Jags and the Dolphins. Just a lot of craziness happening. Trevor Lawrence's touchdown pass to who was it?
Brian Thomas. That was superb.
Brian Thomas. That was one of. There are only a couple of throws I think this week that are better than that throw all around. Anthony Richardson's that you've mentioned, the one that traveled 65 yards in the air to Alec Pierce, that's best throw of the week. There's one other one from Sunday Night Football, and this one is just the skill needed to put that on a rope in that position. And then, what else can you say about Tyreek Hill? That man has built his career on making plays where he flips a game. We look at a lot of sports, and there's another man in Miami who's been famed for this their whole career. You look at certain players in every sport and you just say, especially in team sports, there's always 1 or 2 players who can they have a moment of magic. They will do something. You could be 3 touchdowns down. You could be 3 goals down. They will turn a game on its head by 1 moment of brilliance. Tyreek Hill is one of those players, just like another man in Miami and Messi. Tyreek Hill is one of those players. He will make magic happen and change a game. Yes, that defensive play changed a lot, but just Tyreek Hill will do that. And you are never safe in a game against the Dolphins while Tyreek's on the field with Tua.
Literally, like, you look at something like a comfort blanket. For me, it's like I'll never ever feel out of a game, provided it's not like 40 points. I'll never ever sort of feel like we're out of the game as long as he's on the field. For me, I don't know whether there's a much consensus about this, but I genuinely think how his career's been. Look at his stats. Look at the kind of player he is. For some players, you look at the stats. Sometimes you look at the medal haul, the trophies. And sometimes you look at the all rounds. How they are as a player. And for me, Tyreek Hill, is he a top 5 receiver of all time? Because he's got the stats. He's got 1 Super Bowl. Would have gone more if he stayed where he is. But I can't think of any more receivers that could change a game and make an impact like he does. You think about, obviously, Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, Larry Fitzgerald, Calvin Johnson. But I think that 5th spot, I think that's certainly up for grabs for him to be involved in, because, we all look. Some people like to look at the fact he's just got speed, but he can catch really well, and I think he is perfect for us as well in terms of Tua not maybe being the strongest arm in the league, but he turned a 30-yard pass to an 80-yard touchdown. Unbelievable. And I think Tyreek Hill, there's a lot of bias for me probably saying in this. I don't know what you think about the top 5 thing, Aaron, but for me, I just feel like there's no one in the league, certainly right now, that can do what he does. Jefferson can't do what he does as much in terms of changing game completely with just one play. And I feel Tyreek Hill for me is the best receiver in the league, and I think he has to be certainly top 10 of all time. And I do feel like maybe he could be at top 5.
I think Martha, I don't think about it too much, I guess, or I haven't really put a lot of stock into the thought. Maybe just because right now I'm so excited just football back. I'm not thinking about who's where on what list. But I wouldn't. He's in that conversation, and I think for me right now that's more than enough. Once you get out of, obviously I'm biased saying Calvin Johnson, but once you get out the Calvin Johnson, Jerry Rice, Larry Fitzgerald type conversation, it's just, it opens up so much, and there are so many. And I just kind of, I guess, put my final 2 pence on this kind of conversation is I hate them. Believe it or not, I'm very opinionated, but I'm also very, very fence sitter on certain things where I think it's a ridiculous conversation. For example, the quarterback conversation outside of Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes, I think is a ridiculous conversation because it all depends on what you're going to value in that. And if you value one thing over another, you will take one receiver over another, and then but someone else is going to value that other thing more than you do. And I don't want it's a conversation for another day, maybe during the off season. But I think, yeah, it's at the end of the day, all that matters is he's in that conversation. I absolutely agree that he's in the top 10. I don't care what anyone says, and I have him happily in that conversation. How close he gets to being on the Mount Rushmore, I don't think is the right time. But I think he's etching closer to the conversation.
Yeah, I think for me, if we're going to rank receivers, I go Rice 1, Randy Moss 2, Calvin Johnson 3rd, Fitzgerald 4th, and I just feel like who else can you say? I mean, I may have forgotten someone completely obvious. There's probably one player
Terrell Owens, maybe.
Yeah, Terrell Owens, maybe. Yeah, you could. I think he's in that conversation as well for that 5th spot. But I certainly think Tyreek Hill is in that conversation, and I don't care whether it's bias coming out. I just feel like he's got
Josh Reynolds,
Josh, Kadarius Toney,
possibly. I mean, like I say, it's a conversation and what you value out of a receiver. If you don't value catching, then Kadarius Toney will be right up there for you. But anyway.
Yeah, we'll move on because we are short of time, but we are going to go into our final game. But before we do that, just a quick run through the rest of the game. So the latest slate on the Sunday saw Jim Harbaugh get off to a winning start as the Chargers head coach as they beat the Raiders 22-10. The Seattle Seahawks narrowly beat the Broncos and new quarterback Bo Nix by 26 points to 20. On Tom Brady's broadcasting debut, the Cowboys won against the Browns by 33 points to 17. The Buccaneers won by 37 points to 20 under the Commanders, a new head coach, Dan Quinn. And then Monday Night Football saw Aaron Rodgers last more than 4 snaps. They lost 32-19 in Santa Clara to the San Francisco 49ers. And coincidentally as well, we all know what happened on the 4th play last year in week 1. This year, turnover, 4th play as a Jet in this season. But ultimately made the end of the game, had a fairly good performance, but Jordan Mason stole the show as they ultimately got off to a winning start at home in Santa Clara. But the final talking point is Sunday Night Football. As your team, Aaron, the Detroit Lions took on the Los Angeles Rams and former quarterback Matt Stafford against another former quarterback in Jared Goff. And the Lions did get a win by 26 points to 20. Stafford must hate going to Detroit now. 2 losses in a row in the wildcard round and week 1. We'll let you go first on this one, Aaron, as you are the fan involved in this game. Your take on the Lions win. Because for me, looking as I'm watching the game, it was almost an almighty collapse once again.
Yeah, I want to start off by saying no children were booed in the making of this game, despite what was claimed in the the wild card game. It was made claim that we booed Lions fans booed children. No children were booed in the making of this game. well, I don't know where to start with the game. It was absolutely wild. We looked to have the defense looked very, very good for quite a while. 17-3 up going into, was it halftime that we were 17-3 up? It was a lot of a blur. By a certain point, I'm not going to lie to you. Yeah, we were 17-3 up. No, 17-3 up just starting the third quarter. It looked like, to start off with, I think we ran the ball, I guess, pretty well to start off with, but the Rams got off. I think David Montgomery, they figured it out pretty quick that we were just trying to stuff it up the middle. And then by the time I think they kind of got used to the fact that that's what we were aiming to do, that first drive where we scored, we just hit him with speed. And if you actually watch it, we hit him with, we just hit him with a lot of Gibbs and some Jameson Williams. And it was just a case of, right, if you're gonna get physical and you want to try and beat us in this physical battle, guess what? You ain't beating us for speed in that sense, in this case. So we hit him with, like I said, we hit him with Gibson and Williams. They came back. They were tough. I think a couple of the things that are worth noting and players that I think have been a bit disrespected this game, Aiden Hutchinson. Yes, he's been highly rated by experts and analysts, but madly disrespected by a lot of people, mostly because, and I think Sean McVay, the Rams had a depleted O-line. I get it. You're looking against some backups, but he hit a stat from like 144. I think it was either 44 or 48% of his pass rushes, and he's and blocks. He won, which is the highest stat since they started recording them, or the highest stat and win rate, at least in a long time. Yes, it was against backups, but almost every D end has gone up against backups at some point and not recorded that. So the only thing I think that was disappointing for me was that it didn't turn into 3 or 4 sacks. Any quarterback other than Patrick Mahomes or Matthew Stafford, that was a 5-sack game. If that was Bryce Young, I think we might have retired at halftime if that was the case. But given that it was Matthew Stafford, nobody other than maybe Patrick Mahomes has better pocket awareness and better understanding of his surroundings and what's going on in the game than Matthew Stafford. So unfortunately, it just meant he was getting the ball out even quicker. There were a lot of other things I could complain about that D-line game and holds and everything, but I don't want to get into that. And I think, like I say, going on to, I don't want to be too biased towards the Lions talking about it. Cooper Kupp was excellent. We were advertised before the game and in preseason that Cooper Kupp was going to step up and be excellent. All I can say is as advertised. He was fantastic. Found space. Got what's the word? I said it before. Separation. Got decent separation, managed to scheme quite well. Sean McVay had them schemed so well, changed the scheme to what was working, what wasn't working to something that worked, and the Lions defense did not know how to combat it, I think. But I think all you can really go on to there is one, Puka Nacua. Devastating to see Puka Nacua go out. Absolutely devastating. Wonderful talent, and we just hope for a speedy recovery for him. And finally, that final drive in overtime. That is black and blue football. I felt you could feel like you were watching football in the 80s. That was pure run the ball, smash it in your mouth football. It was black and blue collar football that, let's face it, it's what Dan Campbell's famed for. The whole drive, there was one pass. And as that drive goes in, you can probably imagine me in this general area doing a dance and shouting and screaming. I just kind of went, oh, thank God for that. Oh, thank God. Because it was 5 a.m. I was nervous. And that was about the appropriate reaction that I could give it at that moment in time. Oh, thank God for that.
Dude, there's no better feeling than, I'm massive on sports music on TV coverage. For me, there's nothing better than a feeling than after a long game, you finally see your team play. It's a tough game. I remember it was the Steelers a couple of years ago. You win the game, you're celebrating, then you hear that. That to me is like one of the best sporting experiences. Seeing your team win and hearing that music in the background. And I can imagine you would have been amazing now. I'm hoping for something similar on Thursday. I know different theme tube. I'm hoping for something similar on Thursday night against Bills. But, I felt the Lions for me, when they won that coin toss, you just heard in the background when it went tails and the Lions won the coin toss, you could just hear it in the stages. The fans knew that this was that was a game won, because exactly what you said, they got one of the best, I think, one or two punches in the league, in probably the best in Gibbs and Montgomery, if not one of the best. And I think exactly what you did. And if they got one of the best O lines in the league as well, if that's not working, you got Amos and Brown for the ball too. So for me, it's an unbelievably worked team on offense, and that drive you said exactly was so methodical and exactly what you want a team to do. If you're going to challenge for Super Bowls, challenge for division wins, all of that that you get associated with it, then you have to have games like this where you just pound the ball down, and it's so good for that in your arsenal, because I don't think a lot of teams have that ability to use a 1 or 2 punch like you do and dominate the sort of the game in that way. So yeah, I think the Lions were really impressive. I think defense needs an improvement. I think Terran Arnold had a welcome to the NFL moment. I think he struggled in this game. Yeah, exactly. But it's week 1 of your first game. So, and a guy that I think, Luke put as his rookie of the year, and I think was my draft crush of this year. I think he's going to be a star, but I do think that, even Peyton Manning had a welcome to the NFL moment. Even Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes had a welcome to the NFL moment. That's just going to be his moment. And in a way, I think you probably would rather the fan him have it then come divisional round, wildcard round, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, Lions really impressive. The Rams, I worry about the O-line in terms of the whole season. And a day before the season started, I might have done the worst trade in history looking back at now. That I'm part of the franchise tag, their podcast, Dynasty League, and I did win it last year. It's a cash league as well. And the day before, I thought it would be a good idea to accept the trade where I got Gabe Davis, I forget the other player, and I get Puka Nacua for Breece Hall and a first-round pick. Well, maybe second-round pick. Now, even make it worse, I've got no running back. I've got Raheem Mostert and I forget the other running back, but I really should have kept it because I've got enough receivers there in my team. But I think 3 days after trading for him, and he goes uninjured for, I believe he's out till week 7. Not good. Long term, it will be the worst thing. But I think this year's money might be not going my way. But that is where we will end the podcast for today. So once again, huge thanks for Fletcher coming on.
Oh, you know it, mate. I absolutely love talking football with you, and I am delighted every time I get a message saying, "Do you would you be all right coming on at some point?" It's very, very few things do I immediately look at and just go, "Yes, I'm on it." So appreciate it, man, every single time.
No problem at all. And I said before, it was so nice to meet you finally. It's been a long time coming. And it was so good to meet you and many others in Ireland in what was a great occasion. And of course, I said before, but if you don't already know it, you can follow Fletch. You can see on YouTube here his handle on Twitter and I believe Instagram as well. And also do follow his podcast as well, Sleep at Work, College Football UK, and also Hurdle Line for a great growing podcast in the UK. But you will see us next time for our Week 2 preview with Bills from Afar podcast. Tim Rudge making his podcast debut. Stay tuned for that. Apologies, it's a bit later than we planned. This should have been out on Tuesday, but things happened beyond my control. But hope you enjoyed nevertheless. This has been the Across the Pod podcast, our NFL Week 1 review of the 2024 season. And we'll see you guys next time.